Good evening, Trump's family. Welcome back to my channel. Have a good night, everyone, and God bless you. Alright, the following is a collection of news from Patriots. Let's get into the news this late Monday night. You know, I'm seeing a lot of Democrats on Twitter complaining about this, calling it extremism, harassment. Really, I don't think you guys are wanting to talk. I mean, your politicians essentially set the standard. And ironically enough, the individual who set that standard is actually Nancy Pelosi, his friend, Maxine Waters. You set the standard, you set the rule, and now you gotta live by it, except, of course, rules for the but not for me. I forgot about that one. The same rules that apply to everyone else don't seem to apply to Democrats. Largely, I'm just playing around. Of course, there's no comparison. What Maxine Waters back then was calling for was the actual harassment and intimidation of Trump supporters as they live their everyday life and go to restaurants and exist in public spaces. This moment with Nancy Pelosi, I'd say, was probably just a simple act of patriotism, a simple act of independent journalism, as a brave man in Nancy Pelosi, his own district of all places, confronts her on the Democrat Party, or rather, the unit party's position of Ukraine first in America last. We've got some stuff to get into. So let's roll the tape. Alright, folks, take a look at this headline right here. Watch Nancy Pelosi is confronted by a patriot in San Francisco. Why don't we have $150 billion going to Ukraine when we have homeless in your own city? We're talking about the homelessness capital of the United States of America, honestly, probably the homelessness capital of the entire Western world. Also simultaneously in the richest state. California's economy is one of the biggest in the world, bigger than almost every single country on the globe. And those are regular sights on the street. Does that make any sense to anyone? I mean, clearly, if you were a politician, especially a San Francisco politician, your priority number one would probably be figuring out a solution to the problem, cleaning up the streets and doing right by your constituents, especially considering the negative impacts that your community faces because of this absolute crisis. This humanitarian crisis from Nancy Pelosi, his perspective, the Democrat perspective, and of course, the unit party, Republican goon perspective. Homelessness in San Francisco and homelessness across the United States doesn't even really crack the top 10 of important American issues. Somehow Ukraine is number 1, probably at this point. Ukraine is number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All the way to 10. I mean, when it comes to the legislative agenda, it's impossible to get anything done. When Donald Trump was initially elected into office, when he was inaugurated in 2017, there were 2 years with the Republican House and Senate majority. He couldn't even get basic funding for the wall. He couldn't even get Republicans and Democrats to take healthcare reforms seriously. But funding for Ukraine, a blank check, endless unquestioned spending? Well, that's something politicians from both sides of the aisle are willing to meet on, its unwavering and unquestioned support. They don't ask questions. They're not interested. More money to Ukraine. Where do I sign? That's basically the only question that they ask. And it's high time Americans start asking a very important question in this whole thing. Well, what about me, the American taxpayer? What about us and the people we care of, the people we love? It's really an important question. And really, it's an important challenge to the establishment, and it's a lovely sight to see people finally challenging the political Union Party. Democrats are taking the angle that this is an unacceptable way to confront a congressperson. But is it really? I mean, it's Nancy Pelosi and her own district facing questions from somebody who probably resides there. It's Nancy Pelosi, who's supposedly a public servant, a public figure. You know, this concept or the standard that Western politicians don't need to address the public is a complete farce. Give a bunch of these crony corrupt politicians, these frickin' slithery snakes who do everything to avoid answering questions properly and straightforward. They never address the public. They honestly don't go out in public without security or outside of private venues where everything's controlled for them. And whenever you catch them in public and ask them questions, they say, "No comment. You will have to call my office to get a response. Or you will have to refer to my statements previously on the issue. Answer the damn question. You're a public servant. You're in public." And I think that should be a basic requirement. But instead, We have these cowardly politicians who are loathed by the people who don't serve or actually represent the people, and so they avoid any type of scrutiny by avoiding answering questions, by avoiding actually being out in public. You know, they can't be out in public. Nancy Pelosi can't go anywhere. Most of these politician clowns can't go anywhere, because everywhere they go, it's an embarrassing PR blunder, disaster for them. That's why we see people like Nancy Pelosi and Ilhan Omar AOC getting booed off stage when they make public appearances during certain events. If you're a politician or supposedly leader who doesn't have basic public support, well, then you're probably not doing your job very well. You're probably not a leader at all. And you should probably resign. Is it too much to ask for the standard to be leaders that we actually respect leaders who are admired by the public? I really don't think that's too much to ask. I just think that our standards for politicians and leadership in the West have become so pathetically low that this is just kind of the status quo. And this is what we deal with. It's shameful, it's disgraceful. A political elite class that slips on margaritas and goes to private events, living in private communities, multi-million-dollar waterfront property and country clubs that the normal plebeians aren't allowed to exist in. People who hold themselves to a much higher regard and don't feel as if they're beholden to you, even though that's exactly what their job title and job description essentially describes. And it's a unit party issue, but the Democrat Party is the worst when it comes to this stuff. And we saw it in East Palestino, Ohio. Joe Biden, the President of the United States, so focused on delivering $500 million to Ukraine, personally flies there, gives the speech, hugs and probably kisses, and at this point, probably going to second, third and fourth base with frickin' Volodymyr Zelensky. You know, that's his top priority. Meanwhile, the people in East Palestino, Ohio, Joe Biden can't even recall if he's spoken to the mayor of East Palestine. So do you plan to travel there? And have you talked with the mayor? And some significant news, well, if you need a solution to a complex societal problem, then look no further, confide your trust and find a solution in anyone, literally anyone who doesn't have a D next to their name, because one thing's for certain, one thing you could take to the bank. One thing you could basically gamble your entire net worth on and not even lose a night of sleep will not be able to solve the problem. Remember maybe a month ago that infamous Lori Lightfoot clip, her new genius idea to curb crime, to stop criminals from robbing street vendors on the streets of Chicago. Her genius plan was the elimination of cash. Everyone listen to this, she says. A lot of rhetoric, hear a lot of sound bites, but not a lot of concrete solutions on how we get the job done and make our residents and our workers safe. We're doing our job every single day. I think the follow-up is, and your solution as I just explained it. We have been in Little Village working with those street vendors, understanding what the nature of the crime is, making sure that we're doing things in concert with them to help them make sure that their money is secure, not use money, if at all possible, using other forms of transactions to take care of themselves. Okay, folks, of course, the problem isn't that police. The problem isn't criminals or roaming gangs of thugs preying on innocent civilians. The problem is the existence of paper money. Eliminate paper money, and all of a sudden overnight society turns into a beautiful utopia. This right here is why Democrats cannot solve problems, and especially will never solve the crime crisis that's currently plaguing American cities. Well, that was example number 1. Now we have example number 2 coming out of Washington, D.C. with Mayor Muriel Bowser, another very interesting character with a long history of absolutely terrible policy. Well, as you all know, Washington, D.C. has become a cesspool for degenerate behavior and, again, roaming criminals and roaming gangs. It's one of the carjacking capitals of the world, and Washington, D.C. Democrat Mayor Muriel Bowser has the solution. Alright, folks. So take a look at this headline from the Daily Wire: Free steering wheel locks DCS latest handout. I went to the nation's capital and all I got was this lousy steering wheel lock. Washington, D.C. has had a bit of a problem with carjackings over the last 5 years, and that trend has continued into 2023. To help prevent the problem, Democratic Mayor Muriel Bowser announced that Hyundai and Kia have donated 1,000 steering wheel locks that are free on a first-come, first-served basis for any D.C. resident who drives a 2011 to 2021 model car made by those companies. Wow, well there you got a criminal's BTFO. That's true, real Democratic leadership. That's how you get the job done, yet GOP fascist dummies. Wow. So stunning and brave. So progressive. What it really is is yet again another absolutely embarrassing moment showing us representing the total void of a real leadership in Democrat cities. DC Mayor Muriel Bowser is trying to get some sort of PR win on this one beginning Friday, February 24. DC residents who own a 2011 to 2021 Kia or Hyundai can pick up a free steering wheel lock from the DC Police Department station. Wow. So incredible, but this isn't the win that she thinks it is. It's actually a representation of her lack of really getting anything done. To the extent that Korean car manufacturers have to step in and start giving away steering wheel logs to residents in DC because carjacking has become such an incredible phenomenon, mostly targeting Kias and Hyundais as we've covered previously as well. That's become the new trendy thing with criminals. I've showed you guys previously all the reporting on the Minnesota Kia boys, and that phenomenon has extended to multiple surrounding states in the area, but it's become such a plague in Democrats' cities and an issue that isn't seeing any improvement at all for the last 5 years heading into 2023. Once again, carjackings hitting an all-time high. The Democrat track record has a track record of inaction, and so the car manufacturers have to step in themselves because they're the ones who are dealing with constant insurance claims, damaged vehicles after young thugs take the cars for joy rides and just leave them on the streets abandoned, in many cases without a catalytic converter, without rims and wheels. Mayor Muriel Bowser wants to let you know that she's really doing something to curb crime, but really, it's a bogus band-aid fix and she's not really doing anything. She's just the messenger. I've said it before and I will say it again. It's time to get out of Democrat cities. It keeps getting worse and worse, and the Democrat leadership response, or lack of leadership response, is getting more and more insane by the day. It's like a one-upsmanship back, not all of who can be the most woke or the most progressive, and the results are beginning to be catastrophic. Let's go back to Chicago for instance. You guys might not be aware of this, but the Chicago O'Hare International Airport is currently facing an invasion of homeless people. Portland, Oregon's another great example. Of course, even the Associated Press is reporting that Oregon is becoming a hotbed of extremism and seeking to curb paramilitaries. But the Antifa extremism problem in the city is just one of the issues. Sites like this, for instance, are an everyday occurrence in the left-wing progressive city. You know, just a junkie, casually smoking fentanyl on the bus, nothing to see here. Nobody seems to care, authorities don't seem to care, you get a free pass to do whatever you want. Whenever you want to do it, these cities are falling apart, collapsing. And the contrast could not be more clear. Now it takes a long time to see the real end result of these kinds of policies. But we're going to see it. I mean, Democrats have only really taken this ultra-progressive stance over the last maybe 5-6 years. It started during the Obama days, of course, but really it started to accelerate. Most recently, we haven't even begun to see the true results of the anti-policing policies from left-wing Democrat cities, while Republican states with more red-leaning cities like Florida, for instance, are going a completely different path. Ron DeSantis kicks off a pro-police tour in Democrat-run cities as White House rumors swirl. Video shows Ron DeSantis supporting police and denouncing the woke agenda in New York. He visited New York, Chicago and one other city, I'm not sure which. His goal wasn't just to promote pro-police policies during a tour in Democrat cities. It was actually a recruitment drive. More than 600 police officers from other states respond to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. His relocation offer. He's offering police officers from awoke Democrats cities jobs in Florida where they're actually going to be able to do their job and be respected by the government and the community. So we're seeing the contrast and we're seeing the experiment. On a day-to-day basis, Florida is pursuing tough on crime policies, protecting and policing communities, recruiting new police officers not only within its own state borders, but from other woke Democrat states as well. And so what do you think the results are going to be here? Democrat cities are going to continue going the same route, that they are becoming criminal gang-infested hotspots. Meanwhile, we could pretty much guarantee you the state of Florida is going to continue to make strides and improvements, becoming safer and safer as each and every year goes by, because you have a Republican leadership actually tackling the issue head-on. Are they going to eliminate crime entirely? Of course not. You can never do that. But at least they're going to police it, at least they're going to be putting a dent in the problem and putting criminals where they belong, in jail, in prison rather. Meanwhile, Democrats are pursuing policies like the elimination of cash as a solution to stop armed robbery and relying on car manufacturers to give people free steering wheel locks as a solution to an epidemic of carjackings. It's absolutely stupid. It's not going to work. It's not going to solve the problem. They're enabling criminals or ending cash bail. They're putting violent felons back on the streets. They're prioritizing everybody except for law-abiding citizens, kind of similar to their gun policies, in fact, and so the question is who's going to end up winning the race. I'm putting my money on Republican states and Republican leaders like Florida, Ron DeSantis, offering actual solutions rather than the insane, indefensible nonsense that we're seeing from people like Mayor Lori Lightfoot and DC Mayor Muriel Bowser. Of course, time will tell. It takes a time for this kind of thing to materialize, but I have a pretty strong feeling. I'm pretty confident my prediction is going to be accurate. Thank you very much. WWG1WGA. Give me your thoughts below.